Okay, I'd like to talk about appropriate technology. So we'll be under AAT. Appropriate technology is a term that implies a lot of care and attention to human dignity and to creating technologies which serve the people, not vice versa. The basic principles of appropriate technology, of community-based technologies, are that they benefit all the people of a community, not just a select few. That the technology is understood and designed by all, and built by all, and maintained by all, dignifying all, empowering all, and liberating all. In this case, we're focusing on liberation from the world in which you can only dream to be exploited. As Rafael Puente put it in the documentary that's on YouTube by the way of Bolivia Beyond Belief. It's in Spanish version, Bolivia Más Allá de la Fe. Liberating in the sense that we can manage and maintain and serve ourselves and free us from the enslavement to a machine world in which we are just cogs. A good example of this is the black roof idea that I was introduced to in India. Well, I introduced the black roof idea to pull hot air out of a building to cool it. And the Indian people just went, oh, traditionally we made cooling mats made of hammered root fiber that we would put in the windows. Now, we would have to, this would only work on windy days where we would throw water up onto the mat. And so together in India in 1985, we designed a system with a water tank in the bottom of the window frame and the root fiber mat drawing water up by osmosis, and the dry air being drawn by the hot metal roof with air channels for support and for the chimney effect. So underneath the black roof are 2x2s running the whole length from bottom to top. Let's see if I can get in here and do this. So underneath here's a 2x2 one here, and with some cross supports that allow the air to flow under the cross supports and then out the top. In this case, a simple gable vent drawing the cool air in through the windows where the evaporative mats were. So I could give some interesting examples of an appropriate technology that meets these criteria. One is creating fuel logs out of agricultural waste, which is normally just burned bulldozed into rivers and into the ocean. That agricultural waste can be compressed to make fuel logs so that people wouldn't have to cut down trees anymore for cooking fuel. And now that we know from the United Nations that the #1 cause of deforestation worldwide is the billions of people going out to get wood for cooking by cutting down trees and even girdling trees so they'll be ready next year, and even starting forest fires to kill the trees and justify their being able to knock them down. The movable latrine, the shallow pit latrine, was an idea put together by a community in El Salvador, with my introducing the wavy chick wire to make the latrine platform really light. In India, potato storage was a problem because they couldn't afford the refrigeration. It'd be $80,000 to bring an electric line into the community, and then they'd have to have these walk-in coolers in order to be able to compete with the communities around them. So they weren't even harvesting their potatoes. And I said, well, how did you preserve potatoes in the past? And they said, oh, we would put it under rice chaff. Well, just about 100 feet away from us was several rice chaff piles that were 15 feet high. And so it was easy to imagine putting potatoes in underneath there. And so that's what they did. They built an underground storage for potatoes with rice chaff above it to insulate it from the sun and to keep it cool. That 55-degree temperature of the earth would be perfect to keep potatoes for an entire year and be able to sell them for 5 times as much as during harvest season. So these are all examples of appropriate technologies. And one of the things that I learned about appropriate technologies is that they are often based upon very simple, natural principles. And we are quite familiar with some of these. Now, this is a poster that I put together for my work in Latin America, but we'll be able to follow it along in English. Los principios básicos de la tecnología apropiada. These are the basic principles of appropriate technology, and what it is that dead air, I mean, these are just examples. Dead air is an insulation. Convective currents don't develop in those dead spaces, and so they don't transfer heat from one side to the other. And when you wear a sweater, it's a dead air, aire, muerto, that is trapped by the wool of your sweater. And it keeps the heat from leaving your body. Dead air insulates. Now, here is another example of wool or fiber of any kind, straw, trapping air between its fibers to become an insulation. Insulation in Spanish, aislamiento. Here's a solar radiation. Another basic principle is that it'll bounce right off of glass unless it's at a perpendicular angle to the sun. Then it'll go right through the glass. A white rock will reflect the sun. a black rock will get hot and absorb the sun. So black absorbs, white reflects, and it gave the idea to a community in Argentina working with me to take a house that got up to 130 degrees during the day where the people couldn't even really live indoors. They would stay outside most of the time under the shade of a tree and then move in the evening. And we found out that the metal roofs in the evening would radiate heat to the night sky, dropping temperatures down to 60 degrees or so. So to go from 130 degrees down to 60 was simply really terrible for the health of the entire family. But with 1 gallon of paint, you can paint that roof white and it rejects the sun. It stays cool inside, and at night it will not radiate that heat as effectively as just the galvanized metal. White does not radiate very well. That's why radiators are black. So the idea of an appropriate technology is that it can be understood, and so they could understand that if a rock is cool in the sun and another one's hot, that they could easily imagine their roofs cooling down or heating up in the case of a black roof collector where you actually want it to heat the air to act as a chimney to draw cool air into a building. So these principles have wide applications once they're understood. People can understand that a black barrel will heat up the water on the sunny side, and that will rise and draw cooler air from the other side of the barrel, and creating a convective current, liquid. And that this same principle